Today, I'm gonna go through the best stock trout fishing plunking setup to help you catch more trout. So when it comes to the best plunking setup for stock trout fishing, you don't have to break the bank when it comes to your rod, reel, all your gear and setup. Today, I'm gonna go through end-to-end breakdown of the rod, reel, line, terminal tackle, and baits that you need to get set up to go stock trout fishing. That's gonna be the best plunking setup ever. And we're gonna start out with the rod. What I've got here in my hand is an Okuma SST, a 6'6" rod. Now for stock trout fishing for plunking, I like it to be anywhere between 6 to 7.5 feet on my rod length. Now this rod in particular is a 6'6". It's rated 6 to 10 pounds, but it's got a nice light tip so you can fight the trout fairly easily. Now the 6'6" is one of my go-tos, and my other go-to is this 7'6" rod rated 4 to 8 pounds. It's a little bit lighter, and the tip has a little bit more give to allow you to fight the stock trout fairly easy. You don't want a stiff, rigid rod. You want something light and easy to go catch these stock trout. So if I'm gonna get it set up with a simple rod, go light and go easy, somewhere between 6 to 7.5 foot rod. Now next, let's talk about the reel. I like a 1,000 to 3,000 size reel, and 3,000's okay. It adds a little bit extra line, so if you're doing a lot of fishing, you got a lot of line on that reel that you're not gonna run out. But I would say if you're gonna go simple, light, and easy, a 1,000 or a 2,000 size reel is absolutely perfect. And with reels, you can go super expensive or you can go super cheap. I would say you don't need to break the bank when it comes to getting reels for stock trout. Get something that you like, that feels good, that's in your price range, that isn't gonna break the bank. Now, if you wanna go more expensive for more durability, great. But I think the biggest thing with reels when it comes to stock trout is maintenance and taking care of them. Make sure they're oiled, make sure they're not getting dirt and sand in them. The better you take care of your reels and your gear, the longer that it's gonna last. So if you go with like a $15 or even a $20 reel, it's gonna be perfect as long as you maintain it and keep it going. So next, let's talk about mainline. And yes, I'm not crazy when I say this, but for mainline, I like 10-pound braid. Before you guys grill me in the comments, here's why I like 10-pound braid. With the smaller rods for stock trout fishing, 10-pound braid allows you to cast out a lot further, and it's a lot smoother through the eyelets, and it is sensitive so you can feel that bite fairly easily. 10 pound is not too much for chasing stock trout, and when you want to be able to cover more water and be able to have smoother casts through the eyelets, 10-pound braid is the perfect diameter of line to be able to make those casts and make really good quality casts. Now anything above 10 is way too much. Can you get away with smaller line, say 8 or 6? Absolutely, but it's not going to be able to cast out as good or out as far. So I like 10-pound. Again, this is your main line braid from the reel. I like 10-pound braid, either tough line or Maxima when I'm lining up my reels. Now, next up, let's talk about terminal gear from the main line. And one of the things that I have for my setup, and I always do this now, is to do a Carolina rig sled up. So you've got a sliding weight, as you can see here in my hand, I got a sliding weight off the main line. And the main reason I go with a Carolina style rig is that when the fish then bites, the trout bites the bait and is fighting the resistance, it's only fighting against the line and not the weight. If you have a 3-way swivel here and the weight is attached to that, that's extra weight and resistance that the trout is having to fight against, and you don't want that. You want it to be as light as possible to make it easy for the trout to fight and think that there's no resistance coming back at it, and it's gonna bite into that bait and get that hook in there nice and good. So for me, I like these sliding weights, and these are weights from B&R Tackle, formerly Dave's Tangle Free. They're lead free, and they're great weights that come in 1/4, 1/3, and 1/2 ounce. And they have different colors on the outside. You can get black, you can get green, you can get blue, so you can customize some different colors for different rods. And these have been my go-to weights for 5 or 6 years now when it comes to stock trout fishing. 1/4, 1/3, or 1/2 ounces, you're able to make really nice casts out there. And if you get hung up and lose the weight, not a problem. Again, these are lead free, so that won't hurt the environment and it won't hurt the water. And they got rubber coating on the outside. What I have found over the last few years fishing with these Dave's weights or the B&R weights is you get snagged less, and you're able to get out of thicker grass patches easier to reel your gear back in. So from the sliding weight, I got a 6mm bead right here, and then I've got a swivel. And the reason for the bead is so your weight isn't banging against the knot tying to your swivel. Then you've got the swivel, and this is to prevent line twist. So as you're reeling in, you've got the main line to your leader that you're not getting line twists and things, and you're just gonna be able to fish a lot more, and it makes it just so much more easier. And if you've got to cut off your leader and put a new one on, it makes it much more simpler. So then from the swivel, I'm using 6-pound monofilament for my leader. Now 6, you can go down to 4, you could stay at 8, that's totally fine. What I found is 6-pound mono works the best. Can you get away with fluorocarbon? Sure. Now, fluorocarbon versus mono, people have different preferences. I actually go with 6-pound mono. I've got a huge roll of it. It doesn't seem to bother the fish, and I can fight them just as easy, and you've got a little bit of resistance, so it's not too bad. So anything, again, with this leader, go light as possible as you can. Again, 10-pound on the main line. I like to go 6-pound with my leader. How long of a leader should you have for stock trout fishing? For me personally, I like to start with 24 inches no matter what body of water that I'm fishing on, whether it's something I've fished before or something brand new. 24 is my sweet spot and my go-to. I would go down from 18 all the way up to 36. Again, shorter leader if there's less grass, longer leader if there's more grass and say debris, and you want to fish a little bit more suspended off the bottom. And then finally, down to my hook. Now, what size hooks do I use? I use size 12 and size 10 bait holder hooks from Gamakatsu for a couple reasons. First, they got multiple barbs on them, so it's going to keep, say, power bait or your dough nice and stuck against the hook, and you've got multiple points that can get lodged into the trout. You're going to have a better hookup ratio and a better land ratio with the bait holder hooks, and it's going to keep your bait on longer. So if that fish comes and bites and misses the first time, that bait's going to stay there. That fish is going to be able to come back, that bait's going to still be there, and you may hook up on the second bite attempt. Now, the contrary to that is treble hooks. Now, I fish treble hooks a ton. I fish single hooks a ton. I prefer single hooks. Now, I'm a single hook type of guy. I believe that the hookup and land ratio is greater on the single hook than the treble hooks. It's not to say that you can't use treble hooks, but the one thing with trebles is when they get lodged down in the trout's throat and they swallow the baits, it's really hard to get those hooks out, even with a good pair of pliers. Single hooks, it's much easier, and again, I personally believe that I get a better hookup and land ratio from the single hooks rather than the trebles. So there's the end-to-end setup on the rod, reel, line, and terminal tackle. And as I said, now with line, again, 6-pound, I got 8-pound Maxima Ultra Green here. Again, you want to go as light as line as possible on your leaders. My preference is to go with 6-pound mono. And as I said, bait holder hooks, this is one of the keys that I think to help you catch more stock trout is these little hooks from Gamakatsu. Again, I like size 12 and size 10. Then when it comes to baits, with this plunking setup, the best bait of all is Berkeley power bait or any type of dough bait that you want to fish. You can also fish with power eggs, which is a great versatile bait, and they'll last a lot longer, and that's another Berkeley product. You can also fish with mice tails, which has a little bit more wiggle, and those will suspend and float off the bottom as well. With the plunking setup, you want to go with any bait that's going to float up and suspend. So when it comes to plunking, power bait, power eggs, and mice tails, these are the perfect baits for this setup. Then of course, with this entire setup, what else could you need? Well, maybe a little bit of scent. I got this sweet corn from Procure. This is one of my favorite scents to add, and dabble a little bit on your power bait, your power eggs for stock trout fishing. Sweet corn is something that's amazing because again, stock trout, what do they get fed in the hatcheries? Cornmeal based food. So why not add a little bit of corn scent to it? This can improve your hookup and land ratio a lot when it comes to stock trout fishing. So make sure you've got additional scents as well and play around with it. Different bodies of water, different trout, different days. Scent could be the biggest difference, and changing out and trying different scents could just be the ticket you need to catch that limited trout. Then of course you got terminal gear like pliers and line cutters and everything else that you need. And then one additional thing that you want to have, which you guys can see right back there behind me, is a good rod holder. And I'll show you guys this. This is actually a DIY homemade rod holder. This is just some old PVC pipe that I found that was basically 10 cents. I got a nut and bolt here, and then this metal piece that just drives into the ground. This maybe cost me 25 cents to make. And basically, this is all recycled materials. So you're not putting more into the land waste, and reuse what you have, and you can make yourself a really handy dandy rod holder just like that. So then when it comes to plunking for stock trout fishing, here's 5 additional tips that are gonna help you catch more stock trout on the water. The first thing is to cast in a grid form. So what I'm talking about here is left, right, center, short, mid-range, and far. What you want to do is to cast your baits into different quadrants on the body of water that you're fishing, because the trout might be on the right-hand side here, they might be on the left-hand side. They may be a deeper pool in the middle where they're holding up. So if you're casting in one spot and you're not catching any, move spots, break the water down by quadrants and cast into the different quadrants to figure out where the fish might be holding up. If you're casting to the same spot over and over again and you're not getting any bites, any fish, cast somewhere else, try something different. Now the other tip, I'm gonna make a cast here in a second, but one of the other things that I see a lot of anglers do that's wrong is they make a cast, and the second the bait hits the water, they're like reeling in the slack. What you want to do is let that bait float down naturally to the bottom and then reel up to your slack. Because if you're reeling in as that bait is coming in, you're actually shortening your distance of your cast. Let it float down and sink as naturally as possible, then reel in your slack. Again, let that bait float down. You want to sometimes maximize your casting distance. That's the biggest thing. The trout might be really far out there. So if you're reeling in as that bait is hitting the water, you're shortening that distance, and that might be a bad thing that you don't want to do. So next tip, say if you're fishing with dough, how much dough should you put on these hooks? Well, let me tell you, I would say a little bit bigger than a pea size. You can go bigger, which again, more bait, it's easier to slip off the hook. But in the summertime and when the warmer weather, bigger baits. In the colder weather, in the winter, early spring, late fall, winter time, smaller is the smallest bait as possible on the hook. So what we can show you guys here is I'm going to grab a little bit of bait so you guys can see that on my finger there. It's a pretty decent size. And then here is my hook. You guys can see that there. So I'm just going to roll this over and cover the hook. Now again, this is a little bit bigger than a pea size, but what I'm doing here, as you guys can see, is I'm molding and scrunching the bait together. And what I found is, again, with the softer dough, you want to make sure it's packed in there, because the trout can easily strip it off the hook and then you won't get that hook up. So make sure that you're packing it in there and making it a little bit tough. Again, you want to make sure that the bait doesn't come off the hook fairly easily. So then from a size perspective, again, you guys can see there, the hook is completely covered, and that's about the size. So it's a little bit bigger than a pea size. It's a little bit later spring here where I'm fishing, and so this is going to be the perfect size, perfect bait to catch the stock trout out here. Or where do you cast? If this is the first time I've been here or I'm fishing, where do I want to break it down? Well, for the first off, I'm just going to cast straight out. I'm going to go out as far as I can, and then I'm going to work my quadrant left, right, a little bit shorter, kind of medium, kind of fish it around. So then I'm going to reel over my bail. And then what I like to do is I like to go high and just let it fly. Again, let it out of your hand and follow through nicely, because if you follow through down or you follow through short, then your bait isn't going to go out as far. So you want to follow through as much as possible, just like a golf swing. Follow all the way through or you're going to cut yourself short. So I'm going to throw the cast back here and I'm going to fall through right there. You guys can see that's where that bait landed, all the way out there. Again, really nice long cast. This is a 1/3 ounce weight, or sorry, a 1/4 ounce weight that I just casted out there. And that's probably out there 30, maybe even 40 yards on that cast. I'm a little bit deeper in the spot that I'm in here, and that's perfect. Again, you want to be able to cast as much as possible to cover as much water as possible. So I'm going to let that sit in here. So again, that's now sunk to the bottom. I'm going to let that sit down, and I'm going to put my rod in my rod holder. And here's the great thing about this rod holder. Again, it's up off the ground. It's up here. I'm not having to bend over to pick my rod up. And then when I come over here, it's just easy to pick the rod up and then grab the rod out of there. Now, here's one more tip for you guys. Don't set the hook like you're bass fishing. We're not trying to catch an 8-pound lunker or a 10-pound green fish. We're talking about trout. They're much smaller, don't fight as big and as bad as bass. You do not need to whip and set the hook. This is not bass fishing. Let the trout take the bait, let it put the pressure to get that hook square in the side of the mouth or down their gullet, right? If they swallow it, let them set the hook. You don't need to reel back and gear it back. Just nice and easy, just lean into it just a little bit, or just reel down to it and just reel in, and get that hook will get nice tucked in there from that fish. So now all we got to do is wait, hope that trout gets on that bait and gets a bite. So if you're looking to get yourself rod, reel, and get a complete plunking setup for stock trout fishing, or you're going to get a few pieces of what I've showed you guys today in the video, all the links for all the products that I've showed or I'm using for my stock trout fishing setup, check out all the links below in the description of the video. I have the rod, reel, line, the hooks, the terminal gear, the baits, everything that you would need to get set up for stock trout fishing, or to help you improve or get that new reel that's going to help you cast a lot further out for stock trout. And also from a baits perspective, I'll leave my top 5 baits down below in the description as well, including the colors that I love of power bait, power eggs, and mice tails the most, because there's a lot of colors out there, and which ones are the best, I break it down and give you guys the top 5. Again, links in the description below of all the different colors that I love when it comes to baits. And there you guys have it, the best plunking setup when it comes to stock trout fishing. And if you have additional questions for me on this setup, or how we do this, or any of the gear, drop a comment below, let me know, and I will respond as quickly as possible to your questions on plunking setups, or any of the gear, the rods, the reels, anything when it comes to plunking for stock trout. Drop a comment below and I will make sure to answer your question as soon as I can. Thank you guys for tuning in today's episode, and if you ain't losing gear, you ain't fishing.